Hey guys, I'm Scott, and I am a speaker for Rise and Flourish. I've been speaking with Rise and Flourish for a little over a year. I think it's about a year and 2 months now, and I really like doing this because first of all, we give you real, firsthand experiences of what it was like. You're in a drug and alcohol unit, or you were and are about to be, or wherever you're at with it. You're going to read plenty of things and see plenty of graphs and charts about how it works and what it does in your brain. But what really is important, and for me when I was your age, is to really kind of understand and hear from people. You spent a lot of time just learning things from teachers and books and everything like that. And when I was your age, they had Dare, and a cop would come and he'd talk to us about drugs and do lots of things that if you do this, if you smoke weed, you're going to become this homeless junkie guy, and you're going to die. And that's been proven very ineffective. Now more people are dying than ever, and I've lost a lot of friends and stuff to this disease of addiction. And we just come and do addiction prevention. We're not going to insult your intelligence, and that's what I really like. I feel like when I was younger, they insulted my intelligence. You probably know things like heroin and drinking a lot of alcohol and smoking crack are bad for you. So we're going to skip that part. And I really like what this organization does when they tell you what happened, and hopefully you can relate to us. And I would have really appreciated that when I was going to school. I went to school in Montgomery County as well. I grew up in Burtonsville. It's kind of on the tail end of the county. It's like in a triangle. It's kind of in the back end between Howard County and PG County, and right off 95. And I would have graduated from Paint Branch. That's the school there. But I went to 3 high schools in 4 years, and we'll get into that in a minute. But so I grew up in Burtonsville. I have 2 parents. They're still married to this day. Actually, I have a brother and a sister. They're both younger than me. My brother's the middle kid, and I got a little sister. She's the baby. If anyone's got a bunch of siblings and the youngest is a sister, you know how that goes. She's the baby. She gets most of the presents, and that never really bothered me. I think it bothered my brother more so because I was like the oldest and she was the baby girl, and he was kind of lost in the sauce in the middle, but he's gotten over it. And we grew up in a cool neighborhood. I had a big group of friends, and they all lived in our little development, and my sister had her friends, and my brother had his friends, and we kind of intermixed. I didn't play as much basketball, so my brother did that with some of my friends, and I had a bunch of his friends in our little street hockey club. Mighty Ducks was out back then. Mighty Ducks had 1 was out when I was real young, and then 2 and 3 came out, and we were like really like kind of into the hockey stuff, and we pretend we were them. We wanted to be them. It was huge. We'd have home run derbies, and we'd be hitting tennis balls over the houses and make the younger kids go get them and whatever. And it was fun. Everything you could want, really. When it snowed, we had a killer sledding hill in the back of our house. And there was another one with a steeper hill, like around the corner, but ours was the best. It was the longest. It wasn't too steep, and it was fun. Everyone would come. We always had the newest video game systems because my parents would just get us stuff because just to keep us busy. We didn't have a Super Nintendo, but my across the street neighbor had one, Jason. And my parents owned a small business in Baltimore, and they were gone a lot. Like, they worked a lot. And when you own a business like that, unless you're like some CEO of some big company, it's very stressful. You work a lot, and you're responsible for a lot of people. So they're very stressed out, and they're very rarely around. At times at dinner time or when we were leaving for school, they were like scrambling to get ready for work, and they were stressed. And I was a little stressed. There was times where, we'd go on 4 trips. One summer we went on 4 vacations, one of which was Disney World. And I always remember because I love Disney World, and I was excited all year for it. And months after we got back, I was pretty jacked up about it, and all my little autographs and pictures and souvenirs, And later that fall, a couple months after that trip ended, our power got shut off. And that was embarrassing, I'd look across the street at, Jason and them. I always compare myself to other people, Why is it so easy for them? Why don't their parents have to own a business? They just go to work, and their power doesn't get shut off, and they always have food in the fridge. And, sometimes we didn't have a lot of food in the fridge, or my grandparents would come over and drop off groceries. And I knew what that was. I knew that's because we couldn't at that, for that week or 2 weeks. And, a family of 5, we eat a lot, We had to get some help like that. And I felt weird. everything always felt weird to me. I felt like everyone had a book on how to live life, and I either didn't have that book or I didn't know what page we were on. Everything was so awkward. I feel like everything was harder for me, you know. So I told you about all that really fun stuff, you know, like all these activities, and you know, at one point I came home and none of that was fun. I was one of the last stops on the bus, and we'd wind through the neighborhood, and I could already see what was happening, who was already out, who was going where, or someone was talking about school. They just got at school. They had just gotten a new game on Xbox or whatever, and so I was just excited about after school. And one point, and it was around the time my dad was kind of like in some trouble. I learned, now I know. I didn't know what the deal was back then, but now I know it's that he suffers from the same disease I do. He has a substance abuse issues. His took the form of like drinking too much or gambling a lot. I think he might have gambled the business money away once or twice or something, and my mom like kicked him out, made him stay at a hotel for a few days, and I wasn't ever sure what was like a business trip or if he was in some like inpatient like rehab thing somewhere, or if he was just kicked out of a hotel, or I didn't know. He wasn't around a lot anyway, but it's just another thing that made me feel different, you know. So one time I came home and all that stuff that I used to just be so excited for, and I didn't care about it, you know. Someone came up to me and said, we're gonna go whatever, play horse with these kids, and I didn't want to do it. And I went upstairs and I walked past all that fun stuff, and I went into my room and I just stayed there. And time just ticked by. Like, it was dark. I didn't have a smartphone. This is way before smartphones. So I wasn't going down some YouTube rabbit hole or something. I was just in my thoughts, in my depression, in my imagination, totally embracing my depression, and just the day was over. Oh my God, it's 10 o'clock. I have to go to bed. And I was like, great. I missed the whole day. Perfect. I didn't want any part of any of that, you know. I started skipping school like crazy, and not like my mom knew I was just faking sick or throwing tantrums until she didn't make me go, and she knew what was going on. I was falling behind in school like crazy, and I thought I was smart. I thought I tricked her, and she just didn't have the time for it anymore, and there was probably no coming back from it. I wasn't doing very well academically, and they worked on this thing. I ended up going to this private school for a few years, and I did okay. Super weird and depressed and awkward. Like, I didn't know where I fit in. I had like 2 friends in this small school, 3 friends maybe, a couple acquaintances obviously, but like, I'm weird, you know. And I met a guy. My best friend at the time was David, and his brother would have people over his house on the weekends, and they would drink. And they weren't old enough to do that. They must have known some kids that were older than them who must have had a brother or something. They got it somewhere. And I remember I had to make a decision. I looked at it and I thought about it, and I said, next weekend we're going to do that. And I didn't know much about anything, you know. My first thing was those thoughts that I'd escape into my head about. That really, you know, was an escape. The next thing was food. And I would pretty much base if I was skipping school or not off of like if we had like some good stuff in the fridge and I could watch trash TV the next day. I would like make ice cream sundaes and watch you're the equivalent of the Kardashians. We had like Ricky Lake and Jerry Springer and like just trash, right? And I'd be like, nice, I'm gonna make these ice cream sundaes. I'm gonna watch like Price is Right, a couple soap operas, Jerry Springer, Ricky Lake. Oprah's gonna come on, and then the babysitter gets here. Perfect, you know. So those are my things. That's how I want to not feel. I just want to not be in the present, you know. So I didn't know about alcohol or like getting messed up, you know. But I saw what they were doing, and they looked like they were having fun because, I mean, now I look at it and it's crazy. They're like throwing up and they're passing out. Or like 1 or 2 people have 1 or 2 drinks and they're giggling. And all I knew was I wanted to feel different. So next weekend came, and they poured. I'm sure you've seen movies or listened to certain songs. They drink this liquor out of these little glasses, and because it's poison, right? That's how alcohol works. So you get these little glasses, and you gradually kind of feed it to yourself, and you're force feeding yourself this poison And that's how, or you can mix it with a very sweet beverage to kind of also force feed yourself the poison. And if you drink enough, you'll black out, which means, you have very little control of what's going on, little to no memory of what happened, and you wake up sick from alcohol poisoning. And I didn't know that's what I had at the time. Now I do. I had alcohol poisoning. I was so sick. My mom thought I had some stomach flu or something. I'm at the toilet praying like, oh God, if you get me out of this, I will never do this again. I will never drink again. I will be so good. Please, God. It was so painful. And I'm sure none of you know what I'm talking about because you're underage, so you know. But you know what? By Wednesday or whatever, when I was feeling better, I was excited for the weekend again. Because even the time I was sick, like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, maybe a little Wednesday, that was still like I'm watching movies and my mom's bringing me soup. That was still time that I wasn't feeling how I was feeling, you know? And I didn't really know how to talk to anyone or ask for help. I just felt different. You know, I had thoughts. I had crazy thoughts sometimes. I didn't want to talk to anyone about it. I would fantasize about, I wish my parents didn't love me as much so I can kill myself, you know? And that was like why I thought I wasn't doing that. It's just so hard for some people sometimes. And I would compare to other people, well, they don't feel like that, so something's wrong with me, or, you know, who knows? You never know what's going on with someone else or what's happening. But so, you know, I'm drinking, I'm doing that maybe once a week. It would happen off and on. But every time I did it, almost like 95% of the time, I'd like black out. And there was other people, they would be there and they would have like one or two and they'd like get a little silly and then they'd fall asleep somewhere. And you'll see in a second when Joey does this cycle on the board, some of us do that. He'll talk to you about the 15%. I'm one of the 15%. I keep going, you know. So it turns out you can't drink a whole lot all the time. What you can do is try other things. And so I went on a journey to find a way I could be faded and not get in trouble, you know. So I started smoking weed, you know. I ended up going back to public school. I went back to Paint Branch, and first thing I did was found some guys that also weren't too into this whole thing of what everyone else was doing. They wanted to go to the woods and smoke weed, like before school, after school, during lunch, or just get to school and leave for the day and go smoke weed somewhere by Pizza Hut or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. Nice. So I was doing that and drinking, going to parties, just trying to feel okay, you know. At the end of junior year, my parents lost their house in Burtonsville, and they rented a house in Olney, where Sherwood is. Like, not where Sherwood's in Sandy Spring, but up the road. That was the school for that house. And my friend David was already back in public school, and he was going to Sherwood. And I campaigned so hard for this house. This house had a basement apartment, and you know I could do math, right? Like there's 3 bedrooms upstairs. One's gonna be for my parents. One's for my brother, one's for my sister. This room in the basement has got to be mine. And I'm thinking of every excuse in the book why they need to get that house. And they moved in there, and I wanted to reinvent myself. I want to sell weed, because I'm smoking a ton of weed, and I was around a lot of kids that were selling weed, and I'm going to have parties in that basement. And I'm not going to have parties on Friday or Saturday. I'm gonna have parties on like Monday and Wednesday, because no one has parties on Monday or Wednesday. And if I have parties on those nights, everyone's gonna come. And they did. Everyone came. And that's a problem. There was cars parked all the way up and down Morningwood and Headwaters. That was the intersection by my house. Cops were always coming and pulling kids over, and parents were coming to find, you know, their kids and take them out of there. And I got arrested one night across the street from my house. My parents watched as I got arrested for I was selling weed. I got a charge for distribution, not even intent to distribute. Like they caught me in the act. It was this whole like setup thing. I was so dumb. And then of course, you know, I'm on drug testing at probation, and I'm still having my parties, and I got a DUI while on that very serious probation that I avoided jail time for. Always in trouble. This is the system. It's rigged to keep us in the, like, just this crazy stuff I'm telling myself, when if I hadn't done this stuff, I would be totally fine, Around the end of senior year, I had an operation. I had a little one on my knee and a little one on my back, both from earlier baseball injuries that just little, very, minor surgeries. But I was prescribed opiates. I was prescribed a very low opiate, and that turned out to be kind of my thing. If you've studied this yet, and if you haven't, you will learn. What happens with these things is your tolerance raises very rapidly, and you need stronger ones. And back then, the doctors didn't really know, or if they did, they didn't care, or whatever got us here. But I needed stronger, and I needed more, and they did a few times. I go back, I was on my parents' insurance, and I got more and doubled the strength, and then but it's exponential. Your tolerance keeps raising, and what ends up happening is you start buying them from other people on the street. And then when it gets really expensive, you get stronger things, which back then was morphine and heroin, and now heroin and fentanyl, and then fentanyl is just in everything now, and that's what I did. So it's fun, right? I'm having these parties, there's people around. I would have these screaming matches with my parents. I have to have these parties. I'm networking, I'm building relationships, and when I'm this big time CEO guy, like in Hollywood or wherever I'm in my mind, it's gonna be because of these parties, because of these skills I learned. You don't get it, Mom. I have to do this. I'm in real life skills. So it's fun, right? There's people around me, and it's social, and sometimes that's how it starts. But if you fast forward that tape, I'm gonna bear you all the details. I'm gonna spare you all these details, all right? And I'll get into some of them in a minute. It doesn't matter what happened in the middle. The disease is progressive, and it keeps going. So at the end there was no parties, there was no one, and I didn't even really have a place to stay. And I would crash on different people's couches, different girls' couches, or drug dealers' couches, and even that ended to the point where I was kind of just a few houses down from my dealer, staying under this deck in case it rained or whatever, and it had some weeds. It was a vacant house in DC where I live now, and I'd been evicted months before this, and I thought it was a success. I was like, this is good. I'm going to do my heroin over here. And when I need more, I'll go over here. And then when I need money, I'll go figure out how to get it out there. And that became my life, And I don't want to sound like that cop with Dare that came and talked to us when I was younger and said, if you drink and go to parties and smoke weed, you can be this homeless junkie. That's not how it works. That is what happened to me, but that is missing a whole bunch of information in the middle there. I did travel the world twice. I had different careers, different relationships. I almost got married once. But all the while, life was like this. I got evicted here and there, and I would fall behind on that. My mom's got to bail me out, and she's got to take out a loan that I half pay back, and it's just so hard, and then I'd crash, and then I'd change what I was doing a little bit, and then come back up here. So I'm coming back up, and I get to a bottom, and every time I got to that bottom, it got deeper and deeper and deeper. And I can kind of jump out sometimes. I can kind of persuade and manipulate my way to get a certain job or whatever, make more money to do this. But at the end, the hole was so deep that I couldn't get out, and no one was there to give me a boost or put their arm down and grab me out of there, Because I never asked for help, ever. Never. That might come with being the oldest of a bunch of siblings or whatever. I don't know what it is. Never. Until in desperation, as they say in recovery, I called someone, and I don't know what I was thinking, what was going to happen, but I just did it, and said, hey, hey man, it was the one guy I knew that used to do a lot of drugs, and he was doing what I was doing, and then I didn't hear from him again, and then I had heard he didn't do drugs anymore, at all, or drink or anything, and that was amazing to me. So I wanted to know if he had any tips or whatever, and it turns out there's a lot of people like me. I just had to raise my hand and say I got an issue, so I did. And, I don't do any of that stuff anymore. I try to kind of make it simple so I can explain to people, you're not a bad person and you can go to our website, and there's all these different places you can call, and numbers, and emails, and it's confidential, and they'll help you. If you know someone that's acting a little weird, or like I had a cousin Neil, and he used to call the house. My mom would say, "Don't answer that number. That's he's trouble." And if you know someone like that, they're not bad people. They're sick, and maybe they think, or you think you're going to get in trouble. They just have to ask for help. Just like being sick with anything. I always say it's the only disease you tell yourself you're never going to get, and then when you have it, you tell yourself you don't have it. I don't know anything else like that. So it's okay to talk to someone. And it's really great to come see you guys when we're in this weird coronavirus thing. I really wish I was in school with you guys. I love hanging out all day. It's my favorite. But hopefully we'll get back to normal real soon. And I hope you all have a great summer. And don't be afraid to reach out, all right? Thanks so much.